It's week 13 and Les Sables d'Olonne has been buzzing. With the closest and busiest finishes ever, new records have been set. Tears, flares and champagne have been flowing. But for one team, it's been a disaster. If you thought close racing was reserved for the frontrunners, you need to think again. In 24 hours, 8 boats finished, a record in itself. After 85 days and 28,000 miles of racing, one pair were just 16 minutes apart at the finish. Before Jean Le Cam and Conrad Coleman took things onto another level as they crossed the line just 13 minutes and 31 seconds apart. The Vendée Globe has seen some close competition in previous editions, but nothing like this. With intense private battles throughout the fleet, this has been an exceptional race. But why? To find out, I spoke to 6-time circumnavigator and round-the-world multiple record holder Dee Caffari. So here we are, week 13. What a week it's been for finishers. I mean, we've had 10, haven't we? I've got a sort of list of them here. Sam Davies, Romain Atanasio, Damien Seguin, Benjamin Ferré, Tanguy de Turquet, Alan Roura, Isabel Josh, Jean Le Cam, Conrad Coleman, and the 10th, the latest one
Giancarlo Pedotti.
Giancarlo Pedotti. I mean, and all finishing really close together. It's been exceptional, isn't it?
Super close. The battle's been fierce. And of course, in amongst that group was the winner of the daggerboard fleet. Although we don't separate them, there's those with the foils, but there's that group with the daggerboard boats, of which Benjamin Ferré came out victorious, but they were literally just hours apart as well. We couldn't call which way it was going to go until they crossed the line.
Was it 16 minutes, I think, there was between them on the finishing line?
It was just crazy. And they've been within sight of each other for probably about 70% of the race, they were saying. Literally side by side all the way up the Atlantic. But those combinations of people, because you're experiencing the same thing as the other person, it's a unique bond, and it's kind of reassuring to just hear someone else say how hard it is as well, when you're thinking, God, am I the only one doing this? And when someone else is doing the same and struggling and finding it frustrating, it's good. You know, I know Justine and Boris were really close in communication through all those storm cells off Brazil, because they were side by side and experiencing the same thing. And when something goes wrong, you're thinking, oh, and then you hear someone else has got something wrong. You just think, okay, I'm still in this then. You know, you just got to keep going each day as it comes. Do you think this is an exceptional race for that? Have we seen this before, or have we just forgotten that we had close racing last time? I don't think we've ever seen the races within the race being quite so close. And I think one of those things is the weather. The weather that we've had has been, those clusters have stayed together. They've managed to get on the same weather system and therefore stay together. The issues we've had have been few and far between, and none of them have been kind of race-threatening issues. There's been a few, but they've been things that people have dealt with and kept going, so they haven't kind of fallen off that pack that they were sailing with.
Actually, one thing we should mention was, of course, the other news this week was of another dismasting. Massive blow.
Yes, Arnaud Boissieres, Cali to his friends on La Micaline, and he was just crossed the equator. He was in the North Atlantic and he lost his rig. That's only the second dismasting, which is pretty good for a race, even though you don't want it to happen. Interesting, all the boats are now fitted with a kite, and it was created by Yves Parlier, who insisted that all the boats have these kites that allow you to still move the boat without a rig. So actually there was video footage of Cali setting up the kite and sailing, but of course you can only go downwind.
Bon ben voilà, j'ai dématé ce matin, je suis un peu au bout du rouleau, mais bon. Et j'ai envoyé l'aile de kite de mon ami Yves Parlier. Donc là on est tracté par l'aile de kite. C'est bien les boules. Tellement déçu. Je suis déçu. J'ai du mal à y croire. Mais en tout cas, a priori, j'ai eu plein de messages de mes partenaires, mais de tout le monde, de ma famille et tout ça. Et vous étiez nombreux à commenter et tout apparemment, et je remercie de tout cœur parce que maintenant l'objectif c'est aller en sécurité à bon port et voilà, je suis pas blessé, je me suis fait mal aux mains mais rien de grave. Je suis tellement déçu.
I think he's the only person to have finished every Vendée Globe that he's started. So I think that was the real blow to him when he accepted that it isn't going to happen and he's had to abandon. So that's a real blow. Yes, Jean Le Cam's done the most, but Callie had finished every single race he'd started until this one.
That's so cruel, isn't it? So cruel. Okay, so when we look at the sailors themselves and just looking at those that have come in, Sam Davies came in 13th. Do you think she'll be disappointed with that? Brand new boat, been around before, lots of experience, high hopes.
Well, I think it needs to be put in perspective a little bit. Sam Davies, this was her 4th Vendée Globe. Her last successful Vendée Globe was 2008 when she was on board Roxy, and she finished 3rd, 4th after corrected time. That race was the last time she smiled throughout, enjoyed it, loved it. She then dismasted at Cape Verde Islands, and then 2020 she hit an unidentified object entering the Southern Ocean. It was really touch and go on the integrity of her boat to get back to Cape Town, and then she set off on her own to finish that lap, and it was hard. That was a really hard blow. So on this race she had 2 occasions where she had to really overcome those memories of what had gone before. As a sponsor, Initiative Kerr and all the partners that are involved in that charity aspect, they hadn't had a finisher since 2016 when Tanguy de la Motte was in their programme. It handed over to Sam, and she knew that 1, she wanted to finish, 2, her sponsor needed her to finish. But the frustration will be leading up to the race, she was never out of the top 6. She had a podium finish on the transatlantic, so the expectation was there for her to do really well.
Frustrated with the results. I would have preferred to finish higher up in the results, but I made some mistakes and I had some issues just really in wrong moments in terms of weather windows and stuff. So I know where I went wrong and why that happened. And although the results weren't there, the competition was there, and it was just incredible. And it was great racing with a group, so close to the other boats the whole time. And to start with Boris, Justine, and Clarisse, and then with Clarisse and Benj at the end. And it was just such an amazing race, and so cool to be able to push the boat 100% from start to finish with boats so close all the time. I've got no regrets. It's just an amazing race, an amazing adventure.
Alan Roura, he had a very quick boat. Do you think he might think he's underperformed, or he'd be happy with that result? Or
I think Alan's a really interesting sailor. This is his 3rd Vendée Globe, and he's only 34. I mean, that's incredible in itself. But he had the old Hugo Boss. He knows his boat's quick, but he had a number of issues, and that set him back from the group that he wanted to be sailing with. He had an amazing South Atlantic actually, and he got right back in with the group that he wanted to be closer to and was going really well, and then it was just really difficult conditions. And I don't think he ever found that sweet spot for his boat to be able to perform. He missed those conditions where his boat excelled. But I think he's really happy that he's completed a 3rd Vendée Globe. He's got a new Swiss sailing project projected and planned with Elodie Metro to have Swiss offshore sailing grow. And I think he's such a good communicator. I think he's the right person for that.
Yeah, interesting. That is very interesting indeed. So overall, I mean, there's so much we could talk about, but overall, what have been, with 20 odd boats now finished, just over 20 boats finished, what have been the standout performances for you?
It's really hard to narrow it down. I mean, I think for Charlie Dallin, I think, for me, he sailed an exceptional race. But he sailed an exceptional race because Joan Richon pushed him all the way. and communicated quite well. And we can easily forget that was the first time Johan Richomme had been in the Southern Ocean, and you forget that because he's so experienced. He communicated so well. And I think, you know, his boat was the one that everyone was really impressed with. But the standout performance on the podium had to be Seb Simon. A year ago he'd broken his neck, he'd dismasted at the end of a transat. He had to come back from that relatively small team. He had a partner on board that believed in the project, came on relatively late because 2 years out he didn't have that partnership, and so it was a quick turnaround. He got the 24-hour record, 615 miles solo. I mean, that's incredible. And he said that period from Brazil down to the Cape of Good Hope, where they were on that expressway down, he said he wasn't even trying, but he just literally kept improving and improving. He goes, the boat was just on rails. It was just easy sailing to make that, which was just incredible. And he did all that having broken his foil in the Southern Ocean, so did that whole last leg with only one foil. Luckily, a lot of it was on port, so on starboard, sorry, so not too much of a drawback, but he still secured that podium position. So I think that was something that we didn't expect to come from Seb Simon. We should have, maybe. Figaro winner, you know, there's no reason why he couldn't. And then I think the next person, well, as you say, there's so many, aren't there? But I think Sam Goodchild communicated and delivered a remarkable race, even right to the very end when he didn't let his mainsail damage destroy his race. He repaired it and came in fighting. And between him and Justine Metro, only 6 miles to get that first international. We thought Sam might secure 4th or 5th, and he finished within 6 miles of Justine. Justine got the first international place, and that smashed the female record by 12 days. I mean, and both of them had a generation boat from the last race. So they're on a previous generation foiling boat. So they were more uncomfortable when the conditions were hard. And we forget that because, you know, everyone talks about it's hard when they're really pushing, but their boats were the ones that would nosedive. We've had the bows have all got more volume in, so they ride easier. But those two boats, it was tough to live on those boats. And so what those guys did was exceptional. And then I think Benjamin Detraux deserves a pat on the back. I think his generation boat, a former Hugo Boss boat, but the generation before that, so an old boat, he had setback after setback on the ocean race when he delaminated, he dismasted on Guyot environment. But what he did was learn how to get his boat going right. And he did that. He broke away from Romain Antonaccio and moved forwards. And then he had that battle with Sam and Clarice. At the equator, they were all neck and neck. But it was Benjamin that kept going and kept pushing, and I think he did a really well-deserved finish there. I think he did a great race.
That was very impressive. He was quite emotional at the finish, wasn't he? He is quite an emotional chap. I remember him being quite emotional.
Also, he's a local boy. Seb Simon's from Les Sables d'Olonne, and Benjamin has his project there as well. So I think it's a little bit more emotional for those guys because they're coming home to their home, literally, not just the end of the race, but actually their friends and family are there because they live there.
Who do you think we should look out for in the next, that's come out of this cycle for the next one, do you think?
I think 2 young ones that have communicated a really good race and shown like pretty good grit and tenacity. Benjamin Ferry for me was a really good performance. I'd really like to see him come on to a foiling boat and move forwards because I think he enjoyed it and I think he delivered a really good intelligent race. And Violette Durange is communicating really well, not letting anything set her back. She was quite fearful going into the Southern Ocean because she only knew what she'd read about, but she has really kind of kept ticking along, and I think now with that experience behind her she'll be that much more confident. Hopefully she'll finish and say how much she enjoyed it, but I think, you know, we'll see her grow with experience.
So just over 20 boats have now finished. There's another 10 or so still to finish. What do you take out of that fleet? Who should we be looking at there?
Well, I think it's incredible, one, that the speed of this race. I mean, yes, we saw the record absolutely blown away, but everybody's coming in so quick. The last boat, that's Denis van Wijnberg, the Belgian skipper, he's due in at the end of February. I mean, normally we're into March when the final boats come in. So everybody's had an exceptionally fast race. And I think where we didn't see the records full 4 years ago with the foiling boats emerging and everyone going, oh, it's going to be a new record, Armel Leclerc's record's going to go. we didn't see it because there were so many restarts. The weather systems were very different, and we had all those big restart, or those light winds where everybody congregated again, and it was like a restart of the race. And I think this one's been much more consistent, but faster for everybody. And I think that's quite interesting. And we've got some real characters there. And let's not forget, we've got the Chinese skipper going around for like, I know we see Damien Sagan do an exceptional job as a Paralympian, but the Chinese skipper has got less of an arm than Damien. I mean, it's ridiculous that we're calling it in how much of an arm you've got. I mean, but it's exceptional. You see him go to the top of the rig, and I'm just like, it's bad enough with 2 arms going to the top of the rig, let alone with 1 and swinging around. But his English is getting better. The longer he stays out there, I think he should stay out there because his English is so good now. But, you know, there's some real impressive performances out there, and it's reminding us actually that the Vendée for some people isn't about that race at the front. They watch that and they're in awe of what those skippers have done. But their achievement of getting around the world is no mean feat, you know, on its own. Getting around the world, not everybody does it.
And finally, you drawn back to it? Would you go and do it again?
I absolutely loved following this race, and it was a real privilege to be able to speak to some of the skippers as well when I was interviewing. So I really enjoyed how much I was immersed in it, and following from more involvement rather than on the sidelines a little bit, sharing their stories. But I also feel that because I've been multi-hull sailing now, before, I'd say 4 years ago, you asked me and I was like, oh, the level's gone up, you know, the foiling, it's too intense. I haven't been at that level. But now, because I've been multi-hull sailing and I'm used to sailing everywhere at 30 knots, you know, like, I'm super tempted. I was like missing it big time. But I was like, you know, that's the way it is now. And I feel my sailing's at a level where I can step back into it. I'm more confident in my sailing for sure.
On Thursday morning, with 22 boats now finished, the leaderboard looked like this. Gurek Sude is currently in 23rd place and is expected to finish this weekend. Behind him, there's a close battle between Louis Duc, Violette d'Orange and Kojiro Shirishi, who are less than 30 miles apart. 100 miles further back is Sébastien Marseille. But there remains a big gap to the back of the fleet, who are still over 4,000 miles from the finish and who are expected in by the end of the month.